Welcome to Steelfest 2024, day 3. Voice is gone, mind is gone, everything is total, utter chaos. Yet somehow we are live and gonna kick some ass with these people here we have to host. I am Jerry and this person comes from all the way from New Zealand. Sir, please state your name and your status. What is your role here at Steelfest 2024?
So my name is Rigel, and I play in a band called Diocletian, and we are here to play unholy satanic metal for the Finnish people.
The name, let's start with that. There has been some arguments or wild guesses how you say it. Some people say it's coming from Greek, some say Diocletian, some say Diocletus, and how you would say it?
I would say Diocletian, but I'm not Italian or ancient Roman or anything like that, so fucking could be wrong. But Diocletian is what I say, so it's Diocletian.
Well, you get to choose. Like
Exactly.
in America, you get
Exactly.
to choose how you pronounce it. If you have a weird ass name, just you get to sit to the rules.
Imperial Edict, it's Diocletian.
Yes. So why did you choose to go with that name?
Primarily because Diocletian, not only was like the longest reigning and in some ways the most successful Roman emperor, but he's also the guy that led the greatest persecution of the Christians, right? Fed them to the lions, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like it's an anti-Christian kind of reference, but it's also like something is associated with like power and martial might and all the stuff of like the Roman Empire and that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Now your type is something that scene would call war metal. People who would call it musically would say it's a combination of black and death metal. How you would call it?
I mean, I guess you call it war metal. I mean, that kind of label is like, kind of war metal is like you said, it's like kind of like old school death metal with some black metal mixed in. So I guess we would call ourselves war metal. I mean, that's what everyone seems to label us as. But I mean, like, we draw a lot of inspiration from that, like old death metal and some black metal stuff, as well as what's traditionally labeled as war metal. So yeah, I mean, I don't really care for labels. Like war metal will do. So,
yeah, labels are for libraries and music stores, but as a reviewers, we also have to kind of go with those, even if we don't necessarily agree with them. And you already kind of addressed it, but if you go like selling yourself and like explaining what you want to do, like what is your reference point here? Like people are now like, okay, this is so for fans of what exactly?
Right. I think it's like what we try to be is like as barbaric and ugly and nasty as possible. There's a lot of metal nowadays, and I think like music in general is getting a lot more clean and a lot more precise and well produced, all these kind of things. And if I'm going to get philosophical for a moment here, I think this is like it's kind of contrasting about the whole idea of like metal to me is about, right? Is this ugly, nasty kind of music. But it's also like if you think about the future of music and where things are going, like if you are trying to play like some like super clean death metal, like well produced stuff, I don't know, Viol's Murder or something like that, right? And in 2 years that's going to be gone. It'll all be done on AI because it's all they're trying to be as like computer precise and lined up as possible, overproduced, everything is to a click and all like quantized and shit like that. And like computers will do that better than you can ever do it, right? And that music is popular because people like it, but it will be created by machines very, very soon. It already is. You can already do that, right?
All that Skynet metal.
Yeah. It's already there almost, and like in 2 years it will 100% be there. So I think for me, like what people appreciate, certainly you get this at like a festival like this, is music which is not perfect and is not correct and it's ugly and it's messy, but it's like real, has humanity to it, right? It has real emotions and it feels chaotic, right? It seems like it's not like it's being flawlessly executed like a machine. Sometimes it feels like, is this gonna like go off the rails, at some point, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do, right? We want it to be very like human and nasty and aggressive and but chaotic and like animalistic, right? Like something that's not too precise and not too all that kind of stuff. It has that element of chaos and kind of uncontrolledness to it, because that's what this shit is all about, and I think that's what music is about. If you really look into what people are trying to get, it's human beings trying to communicate something which you can't really put in words, right? It's like a picture paints 1,000 words. It's the same thing with music, and that's what you're trying to communicate is like a feeling, an idea, right? So that's what we want to portray as much as possible, as something that is like deeply, real from inside.
So coming with a really weird metaphor, I'm thinking, okay, those overproduced bands, they're the kind of Italian sports car driving through Ferraris and Lamborghinis, fast way, highway, and then the lots of family cars, family friend metal, rock, whatever. And you guys are like, oh, we go off road.
Yeah.
Fuck you, we're gonna bump into some kangaroos and shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, don't you even care about the kangaroos? And oh, fuck you, we're gonna just.
Yeah, we're the shitty old fucking beaten up Toyota Hilux. Fucking with a massive V8 engine in it, you know. That
The ATV band.
yeah, that's it. Exactly, yeah.
But now the big question is obviously, what got you inspired to do such shit? I mean, before you answer, like you could figure out there are plenty of different metal styles, plenty of different rock and roll styles, and you could go on, whether it's death metal or I don't know, power metal, black metal, pure black metal and all that shit. And you decided like, okay, we're gonna go this dirty, aggressive, war metal-like approach and all that shit. But why on earth just that? What kind of bands inspired you? Like, I'm gonna do this.
So for me, it was when I was fucking 17 or so, like late 90s. I used to go to like a radio show that used to have in Auckland that used to run every like Friday night. I used to go up there. I knew the guys; they were a bit older than me, and I'd go up there and like get drunk and listen to some stuff, right? And one time there, I was up there and they put on, I can't remember what song it was, but it was The Fallen Angel of Doom by Blasphemy. And I was like, what the fuck is this, man? It's so evil sounding and so nasty and so like unbelievably fucking
breaking
crazy.
the rules and all.
Yeah, just like so. I mean, it's like sloppy. Like if you really want to be, precise about it, like it's a little messy, the sound and everything. It doesn't sound tight, but the feeling of that shit, man, it's such an amazing record, right?
Yeah.
And so that really got me into that. And I think it was, so I got into Blasphemy, and then like there used to be a magazine, Australian magazine, that you could get at the record store in Auckland, and they ran an interview with Conqueror. This is when they had the Antichrist Superiority demo had just come out, and so I wrote to Ryan, and got
Ryan
the demo.
Forster,
Ryan Forster, yeah. So I got that, and so then I started looking into Sarcophago and all fucking the other bands of that fucking genre, and so that really kind of inspired me of like I was into like a tons of other stuff when I was a kid, like Morbid Angel and Emperor and all the other things were like big bands for me, but like what really inspired me to play was those guys, right, and the sound that they had. And so my first band, Dawn of Azazel, like our demos and our first album in particular was like very, very much influenced by that. And I think like Diocletian as well is draws a little from those like early demos which we did before the band started. So it's kind of funny. It's like it comes in a full circle of like coming into Diocletian now that I'm playing with them. But yeah, so that for me that was what did it. Just hearing those as a very young kid and just how nasty and like real. I mean, like you could say Suffocation, or let's say something at the same time was like Panzer Division Marduk, right? One of these real fast,
real aggressive machine gun fire.
Aggressive, but it's not as aggressive as like to me as like Fallen Angel of Doom or even like Sarcophago, right? Because that just sounds so unhinged, right? It's not nicely ordered. It's like it sounds like a madman.
I think I'm getting it. Like when Panzer Division Marduk is like those kind of a machine guns. Yeah, you're kind of like it's fierce and deadly and all, and very precise, but it's still the size of the bullets. And you guys wanted some TNTs and bazookas. Explode a little bit more.
Well, we wanted more like berserkers, right? Rather than like a regimented infantry, marching forward or whatever. And that's the whole style of what we try to do with this band, and there's a lot of decisions we make about things where we could be more professional. We could be like using triggers, for example, like a bunch of other stuff to be more precise, but like intentionally we make decisions to be like shitty, like we could be more professional or whatever, but like we want it to be messy and we want it to be nasty and like I don't want to say like punk rock, but you get what I mean, right?
Yes. I think old school people will understand when you get like add a little bit punk to black and death metal, and then you get the mix.
It's an attitude, right? And so to us, that's very important. Like the fact that you can go to the next level. There's a lot of bands that get to a level like where we're at. We can do a headlining tour in Europe and the States and things like that. And the natural temptation, right, is to be more and more professional and get more and more stuff. And it's just this temptation, like I was saying before about with the AI music and everything. You've got a fucking totally backwards thing, right? You're trying to conform what you do to be more appreciated of what works for the music industry and for all these kind of rules, right? And I think there's something very valuable to be knowing a point. You say, no, this is the line we walk up to, and nothing more, and fuck you if you don't like it, right? You know, so that's an important part of it too. I think, right, is intentionally being nasty and ugly, and being able to go to the next level, but saying no, right? And that's I think,
yeah,
a
like
very important part of that.
kind of restricting yourself in a way that luxury.
Yeah, well, just it's like the whole idea of like knowing that path does not where that ultimately leads.
Yeah.
Right, short term it looks like the right idea, but knowing the ultimate destination of that is you end up like, I'm trying to think of like a good example, but you know, like fucking Morbid Angel. I album or something like that, right? You know, it's just an example of like trying to be more and more of this and this and this without thinking like, well, hold on, where's this road end, right? You know, so yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing is something that it's kind of fascinated me, maybe because of my own, athletics things, but one thing which is very, very common with bands related to war metal is the combination of tattoos, big guys working out and all that stuff. So coming a little bit outside of the music and stuff and going back to the kind of foundations. And of course, Blasphemy were the leading examples with the kind of powerlifting skinheads mentality, which led you, well, also to the world of drugs and substances, but also becoming big, strong, and like supporting the music and the whole aesthetics with something that money can't buy, power and, well, muscles. And you, I know, meeting you, also as Marcus from the band and all that stuff, you're kind of a prime examples what it could be, like this kind of I know nowadays somebody's going to cancel and say, I don't want that, but we don't really give a fuck. I'm saying this kind of alpha man mentality, like becoming the predators rather than being the prey. So what is your story related at being a tattooed and big guy with muscles and obviously power?
Yeah, I mean, coming back to what we were saying about like when I first heard Blasphemy and Sarcophago and things like that, right? You know, this was when I was 16, 17, you know, and I read like The Spectre of Thustra by Nietzsche, and I was very influenced by that and a lot of other texts at the time. And to me, they all touch on like what masculinity is, but on like a deeper level, right? Like superficial masculinity is, oh, you know, I fuck a lot of girls and I'm a big tough guy and
have fast cars and lots of money and blah, blah, blah.
Shoot a lot of guns or something, whatever it is, right? You know, but there's a much more profound, deep understanding of like what it actually is to be a man, right?
Exactly.
You know? And so, you know, to me, like, I think from that angle to return to what we're saying about different types of music is like superficially, you would say like the most like technical slam, you know, lots of sweet picking stuff sounds really tough and brutal and hard. But to me personally, if I really think about what it is, like a masculine energy, it is that like berserker rage stuff, right? Which is, you know, what that music brings out. So you know, it relates to the music, but it's also like, to me, I read Nietzsche and I, you know, kind of was really into that and many other philosophical texts of a similar nature. And so when I was 20, I joined the army, and then 21, I joined the police, and I did that for 10 years. And to me, the whole thing was, yeah, I mean, sure, you know, like in metal, there's all this talk about tough stuff and all that kind of things, but like very few people really, you know, like experience like real tough, you know, like real fucking action kind of things. And so to me, the drive was, I believe this philosophy, and you know, this is a way to self-actualize or to become more of your essence, like more manly, right? You know, and so to me, like to do those things was to reach into that kind of stuff, and that was how personally to me, you know, I got to more like lifting and exercise and shooting and a lot of stuff like that. Martial arts was through that, but I think everyone in the band has the same energy of understanding, like, you know, and metal, there's a lot of its stuff is for show, and like, you know, really this is entertainment, right? You know, people who are musicians, they're not politicians, they're not this or that, right? You know, music is entertainment, but at the same time, if you want to create real music, as I was saying before, you can't just like get a computer right. It's got to come from the heart. It's got to be real, and people can feel that and they can see that, right? You know, you can't bullshit. You can kind of bullshit it, but like I think when you see a
fake
band,
it until you make it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think like when you see guys who are like real, there's something different, right? Like Blasphemy is a great example, right? You know, there's
exactly.
like this maniacal energy, like the scary kind of thing, which it doesn't matter how much corpse paint you have on or whatever stuff, you can't replicate. These guys look like fucking insane guys,
exactly,
right? You know, and so that I think for all of us is a very important thing of like, you know, we're not just doing this to play, like we all live a lifestyle which is like relatively kind of crazy, right? And has some of those elements. And I think the whole thing about like playing music, like on, you know, we've been on tour now for like 5 weeks, is understanding that and embracing it, right? Like too much of your life is too regimented, too ordered, to whatever you need some chaos in your life to bring these things out. And like creating art, you know, it's like, it makes no sense, right? If you look at it, like, why the fuck would you spend all this money and time playing guitar to, you know, with what you get out for what you put in, it doesn't make sense. But, you know, people are real musicians, are driven to do this stuff. It's not that they choose, it's that they must, right? They're driven by some deeper force.
It's like something deeper in the back of our heads.
Yeah.
Like we're kind of hardwired to fucking do that stuff, even that makes no sense.
Yeah, it's like if you're hungry or you're horny or something, man, you're driven to do something. The reptile part of your brain is driving you, right? And so
no free will.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think like it's free will and somewhat of a how would I say, you know, a circular operation of like it's free will. It creates that particular state of your brain which impels you to do it more. So it's like a reinforcing kind of thing. But yeah, you know, so I think that is really what our band is about is to create the sort of music and to really do it and to really live it and for people to see it and to really have the feel that this is real and this is authentic. You've got to live the lifestyle that's in line with it, right? And I think those things, for me personally, are like ways that connect you to that kind of essence, right? So yeah.
So there's a lot to it, a lot more than just like picking up the guitar and cranking up the volume and putting it at the pedal.
Yeah, you kind of like 10-year-old, 16-year-old kids from some nice second country riding this shit, right? You know, and people see it and they feel it, you know, that these guys are not fucking some nice boys from somewhere else. They're like real motherfuckers, right? You know, and that's...
And yet here we are having...
Nice, fine wine.
Okay. Here we have part 2, pinky fingers, sipping red wine. And what do they say when they have black metal and all that stuff?
Satan.
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 So, we also, before the interview, we talked about Henry Rollins, which I guess is not too familiar topic to a lot of people in the world of black metal, death metal, and beyond. But also kind of a connect to this mindset, like being healthy, being strong, playing extreme metal, and being very focused, discipline, I guess, above all others. And you mentioned the text, the iron, and we talked about like that, like having the focus, like whatever the other kids go, whatever they want to do, be sloppy, be fat on your own time, own terms, or whatever. This is not very compatible with your idea, so.
Well, no, I mean, I think to me what I got from the iron, that text, which I think is a great fucking text, is that what you get from like lifting and exercise in general, right? And I think like to return to what we talked about earlier, it's like a very masculine kind of thing. It's like men need boundaries, they need rules, right? You know, and like the masculine energy is like this crazy, chaotic explosion, expansion until you hit something physical, right? And that's how you come to know the world, is finding boundaries, right? You know, and I think men focus very well, particularly like kids, like young boys. They need boundaries, they need like guidelines, they need that kind of stuff, right? And I think like weights is the ultimate. Well, there's other ones, but it's one of the ultimate ones, right?
A reference point in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can fucking say you're this, that, or whatever, but you know the weights do not lie to you, right? You get
they don't give a fuck.
They don't give a fuck about how much money you have, like what car you have, whatever. You know, if you've got, like, let's say it's fucking 100 kilos, and you know the 100 kilos is only going to move if you can push enough weight to do that 100 kilos up, right? And so it's like it's a truth. It's a reference point. It keeps you focused. It gives you discipline, and you know reminds you who you fucking really are. It slaps you in the fucking face.
Yeah, it's not like. Whether you have a bad day, whether you have a good day, the iron is not expressing, oh, I feel sorry for you, bro. Did you break up with your girlfriend?
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck. Make me move.
Exactly.
Or go home.
And that's like, it's such an important kind of reference to keep in your life, right? Because again, that like gives you that grounding and that focus and reminds you of like that whole point of overcoming obstacles as well. Because I mean, like I think, like to me, the greatest book about like if you want to have a philosophical understanding of what it is to be a man is that, have you read like The Way of the Superior Man by David Data, that book?
I haven't read it, but...
That book, like, highly recommend it, right? First chapter of that book is like, it's called like, Stop Hoping for a Completion of Anything in Life, right? And what it says is like, as a man, your life is a constant progression of problems, right? And many men think like, oh, if I could get like this car, if I could make this amount of money, if I could get this job, I get this title, like my life would be easy. But what you realize, you know, as you get older is like, it never gets easy. Life is a constant progression of fucking problems, right?
It's
you get the car
of failures.
Yeah, another thing, right? And so the whole point of like understanding what it is to be a man is to stop hoping or thinking that you can ever solve the problem. That like life is problems. And all that it is to be a man is to like be able to consistently solve problems and not let it fucking break you. Because like, you know, you'll have things where you fail, right? Where you try to do something and you don't succeed. And does that thing like make you cry? Does it like break down? Does it break your faith in yourself? Or you just realize like, man, like I will never solve all these problems. Like I'm always gonna fail. I'm always gonna have barriers I run into that I can't go through. And the whole point in life is just embracing the fact of engaging in challenges, right? Whether you succeed or you don't succeed is secondary to like enjoying and appreciating and like embracing, having like hunger and energy for problems. Give me more problems, give me more problems. If your life is too easy, you're like, let's make it more difficult.
It makes you more lazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you're like too comfortable with things, like you have too much money, excess time, and you don't have to work for yourself, or it's gonna like give your brain a little bit laziness.
Yeah.
It's gonna make your body lazy.
It makes you weak and it makes you soft, and you stop running away from things and you stop embracing them and you stop having principles because you roll over, right? And you stop, rather than embracing difficulty, you're afraid of it, and that starts a cascade of like wanting to run away more and more and more and avoid things, right? And again, the whole principle behind this, and to where we started with this, was about like weightlifting. Is something that reminds you of like, you know, your life is solving problems. You're like, maybe one day, like, I lifted these weights 5 times this week already, I don't want to do it again. It's like you're missing the point, right? You know, you're thinking like, I got to get a break or whatever. No, the whole point is to like, to embrace problems on a daily basis and to solve them if you can, is like what living is. Like what reinforces you, what gives you the energy, what makes you, centers you, and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and then sometimes it seems like people like confuse like this kind of a physical work, like for example, going to the gym, powerlifting, weightlifting, whatever, is like, so is that all there is to it? And I like saying like, no, you can go for martial arts, play basketball, whatever. It's more about like challenging your body, pushing you through things. So for example, if you like hiking, and you like go to the next mountain, you can go to the next, but we don't in Finland, we don't do much. We don't have mountains, so I'm like the wrong person to talk about it. I like, it can be swimming, it can be about skiing, it can be like a punching bag with your friends, but push through those obstacles and become the better version of yourself. And then I think there was this Miyamoto Musashi thing about like
another
aim to be a better version of yourself tomorrow instead of just settling down for what you have today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he touched on a lot of those same kind of masculine principles I'm talking about, right? You know, a good example when you talk about the hiking as well. Why would you hike when you could just drive up in your car, right? You know, and there are many peaks like that where you can drive, but you choose to walk because it's the experience of walking is what you want to do.
It's like, more like the trip rather than the...
the destination is the journey is the destination.
That's exactly. But thing, right? We know the saying.
Yeah.
But let's get back a little bit to the band as well. Now we have covered a little bit about the music and the philosophy about it, but now people are like, so what are the lyrics like? What do I need to know about the Diocletian lyrical side of things?
Well, I mean, so for me, you know, I wrote the last 2, and we've, you know, had a progression of different members writing different things at the time, so I can speak to like what I write. So in my previous band, like I had stuff which was a lot more. I've always been like very focused on the lyrics, and they're very important to me. And I used to be like very focused on like meter and having shit that's very deep and like very well worded. But intentionally in Diocletian, I try and keep it like as simple and as brutal as possible, because that
barbaric
in keeping with the music, right? You know, like for example, we have Restart Civilization. It's just like restart civilization, eradicate it all, war killing, final beginning. That's it, you know. And I could have written much more, but I was like, no, I just want to keep this as simple and as basic as possible. And that also comes down to the meter and the pronunciation. Like, try not to fit a zillion words in, or if I do, squeeze too many in, right? So it sounds like a little chaotic, a little like, you know, like manic to get it in there. But yeah, lyrically, it's basically, to me, it's all about the philosophy of the strong, like the stuff I talked about before, about like overcoming the weak, crushing them under your boots, overcoming yourself, being the most powerful version of yourself that you can be, rejecting all falsehood and illusion and lies, and focusing on like the brutal truth of existence that we talked about before. And so yeah, you know, it's that whole Nietzschean philosophy, but in a very basic, simple kind of way. Like if a fucking 16-year-old guy from Sarcophago was articulating it in broken English, it'd be like how I would try and think about what I'm trying to do lyrically.
All right. Getting back to the more aesthetic side of things. So we have these guys playing guitars and playing other instruments, doing the nasty vocals, having the big fit. Then you have also these tattoos, which also bear some kind of a meaning and language, how you kind of carry yourself around. What kind of story we can expect people to figure out? Okay, these are the big bad motherfuckers having the story of tattoos, so you have quite a bit of ink.
So this is, well, what do your tattoos mean? Is that this question?
They're kind of like, because they are not their typical. There is no wolf, there is no random lion, or there's no. What can you explain about these?
They're all like dark satanic kind of influenced images and stuff like that on this one. On this side here, this is all to do with like encryption and that sort of technology. Because to me, what I think is like the world that we are in today is like we're at a junction point in history where civilization is generally driven by technology. It has a big part to do with where it goes. And I'm really a big fan of this book. Have you ever heard of it called The Sovereign Individual by James Dale Davidson and Lord Rees-Mogg? So in this book, they talk about the idea that like in the past, like there were in the last kind of major revolution in society was driven by two technologies, the printing press and gunpowder, right? Before you had the printing press, the church was the only one that could distribute anything that was able to be read, right? And the only way that you could read the Bible is what the priest told you, right?
Exactly.
And the church had this massive power because of that, right? But when they brought in the printing press, it democratized the access to information. The first thing they printed was the Gutenberg Bible, and they printed thousands of them, and people could read the Bible and say, this isn't fucking what this says. What this priest says is not what the Bible says. It's this, right? And then they could also distribute information and distribute ideas, right? And that totally undermined the power of the church.
Kind of revolutionized.
Yeah, exactly. Changed society because it undermined the church and it gave like power to the people. The second one was gunpowder. Before gunpowder came along, to be able to kill people, you had to train for years, to wield a sword. And and it was the only people that had that power were like knights, and to have like the armor and the horse, you had to be from a really rich family. And so that meant that like the kings could go to villages and stuff and demand money, taxes, right? Like pretty much
basically bullying.
Yeah, exactly, right? And then gunpowder came along, and this is here now. You've got even the most basic guns. You can get like the biggest village idiot, and in an afternoon you can teach them how to kill hundreds of those guys, right?
Yeah, even the small kids can like defend themselves against these big knights and assholes.
And so that kind of is what got rid of feudalism and kind of really led to democracy as we know it today, is like that it undermined those systems and it gave power to the people, where any small town could now get a bunch of firearms and the king comes with his knights and says, well, no, we're not going to pay you, and if you want, we're just going to fucking shoot you all. And there's nothing they can do about that, right? So to come back to what this is, this book says that there are two technologies at the moment which are fundamentally doing the same thing, right? The internet is the same thing as the printing press,
exactly.
Right?
That's like a version 2.1.
Yeah, exactly. And like we were talking about before about like journalism, great example, right? Before the internet, the only way to distribute information or to like, if you're a band to get stuff out there was to kiss the ass of these journalists, right? And now you can do it all yourself through the internet. You can promote it, right? And so it fundamentally undermines that, right? And the one, there's the analogy of gunpowder is encryption, because no amount of violence can solve a mass problem, right? It doesn't matter how many tanks, guns, bombs you have, you can't undo a one-way mathematical function. And what that means is like for information, if you had any sort of information in the past, if you had enough guns, tanks, bombs, or whatever, you could go and get that information from someone. You could break down the castle, or you can get that, right? But if it's encrypted, you can't just like beat it up, right? There's no way that you can take that. And probably the biggest part of what this means is that's interesting for information, but now you have things like Bitcoin, where money is data. Money is like, the money is data. And so that can be encrypted, and that means that's a fundamentally super powerful thing, because it means that like, as I was saying before, in the past, if you had like a ton of gold or money or whatever, you could go and storm the castle if you had enough weapons, right? But in this world, like you can't beat someone up. You can't take their money because it's encrypted, right? It's like the most powerful way to fundamentally undermine the martial system, or like the rule of more violence gives you more power.
And even if you kill the one that you're going to rob, then you're going to lose the access to it.
Exactly, right? So to me, this is what inspired this, and this particular tattoo here is based on PGP, which is called Pretty Good Privacy, and it's a way to encrypt information. And kind of the story about why I got this is how I got into all this stuff, like Bitcoin and these kind of things, was I read about like, you're familiar with like the dark web, where you can buy drugs online and shit like that. So I read about when Silk Road got shut down. I learned about that, and because I used to be a police officer, to me this was like super interesting. I couldn't believe that this was running for like 2 or 3 years and they couldn't shut it down. And so I started looking into all this, and went on these sites and bought a bunch of like crazy drugs that you can't get in New Zealand, like fucking DMT and things like that, which are impossible to get in New Zealand, right? And the whole way that it was possible was paying through Bitcoin and sending that information, communicating through PGP, through encrypted stuff, right? So to me, it's like I have here like Verus and Numerous. I mean, strength in numbers. It's not strength in numbers as in a lot of people. It's like there is strength in like mathematics and power and shit like that. So to me, like that's what inspired like this side of my arm is like all shit about that understanding and realizing that power and how that's like a fundamentally. It's not only is it a fundamentally powerful thing about the change in our society, but it's like someone that's extremely individualistic and believes in the power of the individual. These are technologies which fundamentally empower the individual, right? They remove the power of the government to say you are a property, you are like a cattle that we can milk for tax, right? There are ways that you can say fuck you, and there's no way that they can. It doesn't matter, like I said, like how many police officers, how big your army is. You can't take that from individuals, right?
You cannot really kind of destroy the underground in that sense.
Exactly, and so to me, it's a fundamentally, it's a very like it's in line with everything I talked about before. It's like a technology which fundamentally empowers the individual, and so that's what inspired all that. Yeah.
That's a very, very fascinating story because it's indeed something that's like always open for people to find out, but a lot of people don't want to open the doors and windows and have their ears open.
And this is come back to what we're saying. I mean, that's the whole thing of it. Is like these are technologies which require responsibility, right? No one is going to hand it to you on a silver platter, and if they do, you can't trust that because if they're giving you that power for nothing, obviously there's something going on behind the scenes where no one gives away power for free, right? So they're undermining you. So it's something where you have to take responsibility to be able to get that. And the whole point of this kind of book, The Sovereign Individual, is like that where the world is going is that there will be a small elite of people who have the inclination, the drive to make use of these technologies that will be more fundamentally free than you can imagine. That like could pretty much live anywhere and be outside of the grasp of like governments. That the crazy thing, right, is that we think that like you're Finnish, I'm a New Zealander, right? And this is the idea that like that is who you are and that your government owns you, right? And this is your identity. But that's a crazy idea. If you look at like even 300 years ago, I mean, you had like a nationality, but it wasn't like your country owns you, right? The way that people think about this. If you wanted to move to somewhere else and you could speak the language and you had the money and stuff to go, you could just go, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that now, right? Like, for example, if you're a citizen of the United States, you've got to pay taxes to America forever. It doesn't matter if you haven't lived in America for fucking 30 years, you've got to pay them just because that's where you're born, right? And so the world that this thing talks about is that like through these technologies, what is going to happen is these will undermine governments and the power of these things, and we'll have a world more where individuals can buy or can choose between governments or jurisdictions where, who knows what this world will look like, but something like you'll have one country saying, oh, well, hey, we'll give you a passport, we'll give you a visa for 5 months, and it will cost you like $20,000, but for that you'll get health insurance, you'll get, police force or protection of your thing in this particular area. And you have some other government say, no, hold on, man, come here, and we'll do it for 5,000, and so this is where this world is going to go, because when your money is not like held in the system and you can take it out of there and they can't seize it, it gives you the ability to move around and to choose. And so that's where this whole world is going. And so to come back to the tattoos and this whole long rant, it's about like this, it's a vision of the future where the individual is extremely empowered. And I think everything about our sort of music, and if you were to talk about like, I think like what satanic philosophy or whatever is, it's about the primacy of the individual. And so I think
so individuality is really, really getting more important and also more kind of driven by it, rather than previously when it was more all governed and.
Yeah. Well, but as you were saying, you've got to want that, right? And I think there's also like, I think people in the scene are very familiar with like elitist ideologies. I think there's an element of that of like you have to have the strength, the will, the desire to choose to master these things, because they're not going to be handed to you on a silver platter.
Well, no.
And it's going to take time and energy to understand them. But if you understand them, you're going to be like a superpower, right? So.
Can we even go to that as far as that you never can beat the system, but system can be your friend if you understand how it works.
Exactly, yeah.
Coming to that a little bit, and that you mentioned that the background as police officer, and now people are like, yeah, but black metal specifically is like, when you have the drugs and all that stuff, and now isn't there a contradiction in you being a cop and having seen people of various backgrounds with not so legal substances.
Oh yeah, I mean,
you ever clash?
I mean, you know, so I quit like 10 years ago, just for clarity on that. But yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in the police, you know, I was amongst that kind of stuff. But to me, like, I didn't join the police because I like believed in, you know, like drugs are evil or something like that. Like to me, it was purely a process, as I mentioned before, about reading Nietzsche and shit like that, and understanding that like real growth, but you know, real self-actualization comes from like real danger, like real shit, right? And in New Zealand, like you can't really join the army and go to Iraq or you know, but like the police is like the way that you can like see these kind of things, right? Yeah. And I learned like a lot of brutal lessons about myself and things like that, and it really shaped me into the person I am now. In some ways, like in a negative way, I'm glad that I've been out long enough now where I can like decompress from that kind of mindset. But to me, it's like it wasn't about like the principles or anything like that. It's simply I'm here to go through an experience to learn, right? It's something like going to the gym, or maybe like here, you guys understand in the sauna. When you're in the sauna, it's like not particularly pleasurable, right? You're like, I want to fucking get out, right? But you're there like, because I want to be here because it's gonna, when I get out, it's gonna be so much better. I'm gonna be so much better.
It's a cleansing process for sure.
So to me, that's how I saw that, and that's what drove that whole decision, was to do that and to get that understanding and that self-confidence and that insight, which you can't get from anywhere else. So yeah.
That's a pretty fucking interesting how it goes all the way through.
Thank you.
Now, before we quit and let us go about and all that stuff, what lies ahead in the future for, let's say, 2-4 years for Diocletian? I mean, what's going on? So,
US tour is probably the next thing on the books. There was one supposed to be happening in October of this year, but it was around a festival that got cancelled and it's going to like put off till next year. So, not quite sure when that will be, but probably end of year, possibly early next year. I'm not sure. We're going to talk about this after this tour. So that probably some shows, New Zealand and Australia, I think, eventually. And outside of that, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, we've just doing this tour for 5 weeks, so we've been 100% focused on that. But after that, also we're already talking about the next album and working on that. So I think, obviously that's a long process of writing it and getting it when it actually comes out, but I would think sooner rather than later, 2-3 years, probably the next one coming out. So they're the main things for us at the moment. So.
All right. What should people now on the other side of camera, who are like, okay, I figured out this band by accident, finding it through the channel maybe. What should they start with in their deep dive into the world of the band?
Man, well, it depends what you're into. I mean, like, obviously most people would say, if we would trust Spotify's metrics, Cassandrian. I think Cassandrian is a great album. But Cassandrian also is like, I think we all feel it's a little too like clean, a little too in that direction that we don't really want to kind of go so much. So to me, like, man, I'm gonna say like Amongst the Flames of Burning God, like the last album, or our newest one, of course, you know, it just came out, Inexorable Nexus. Check out those, because to me they are a good mix of like being tight and focused, like more than say, you know, Doom Cult or Against All, and you know, the older ones are, but they're still beastly and nasty and ugly, right? Which is what we are trying to do. So, yeah.
All right. Any final words to the audience, like regards and hellos, or just word to the wise?
No, just harden the fuck up, go to the gym. That's my one last thing I want to say.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you so much, man.
Now you hopefully know a little bit more than before about the great band we have here, and do as I'm gonna do today. When you have the possibility, go to witness them on stage and prepare for the unexpected, because you never know what kind of bullets and bazookas or explosiveness it's gonna find out. Or maybe you will find red wine, drinking beer, hippies, doing some bicep curls. Just prepare yourself, adapt, conquer, win. There is all to it. This is Rauta, Steelfest 2024, Diocletian, and off you go. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
I think we could have kept it going for hours and hours. And eventually...
Why don't you get me started, man?
But this is what I like. This is why I am so driven to do this.